Presidency and has then been moved. Now, finally, we are here, although most of you over Zoom, but you should know that what I see here is almost full audience of my Commission colleagues and colleagues from ESFRI and strategic working groups of ESFRI. Now, for the beginning, I would like to thank the French presidency to make it happen, even under very difficult circumstances. Thank you very much. My name is Jana Kolar. I'm the current chair of ESFRI, and I will be moderating this first part of the stakeholder forum, during which we will first have three introductory messages from, I will start, and then Jean-Éric, and then the three presidency. And this will be followed by the brief messages from our key stakeholders over Zoom. Now, to start with, I will just mention a few housekeeping rules. Please, you've heard them very often over the last 2 years. Keep your camera and mics off unless you're speaking. And don't forget to turn them on when you are. So let's start with my brief introduction to this forum. The thought of the stakeholder forum was born during the preparation of the white paper, which was led by my dear colleague on my right, Chair Jan Hrušák at the time. Now, during the discussion for this white paper, it became clear that although we continuously involve our stakeholders, we are not doing enough. So we were involving research infrastructures through a number of activities. We had open sessions where we invited them to our ESFRI meetings. We had a variety of events, be it presidency conference or exchange of experience workshops. And it was really a rich plethora of different kinds of events. However, we understood very well when we were preparing the white paper that the stakeholders our stakeholders do not end with research infrastructures, that there's a much broader community which contributes to our work and from which we can learn. And so we decided that we need to address it from what is called a stakeholder forum. Now, to do this, we have considered setting up, we set up a platform, online platform, which will contain a variety of information for the broad community of our stakeholders, and also possibly be interactive. And we have asked stakeholders to register, because although we do know who our key stakeholders are, in addition to research infrastructures, our stakeholders come from universities who contribute to our operations, but also users, several users, user communities are at universities, also from technical universities and RTOs, so the broad research community. In addition, there are other stakeholders, for example, business associations, or for example, Science Europe, which has a dedicated group on research infrastructures. Also, European universities work on including research infrastructure and developing their activities around research infrastructures. So I will not try to list them all, because we realized that we cannot. So we thought that it's best to open registration and say, if you consider to be our stakeholders, please register. And we ended with a rich portfolio now of stakeholders, which and this community is also the one that was invited to this meeting. Now, in addition to the registration and the setting up of the platform, we also thought that it's extremely important to have the meeting, which is what we have today. It's the launch, but okay, stakeholder meetup. And we thought that it's extremely important to be in person, where people would be able to meet, exchange experiences, get to know each other. And in this way, also through formal exchanges and informal ones, contribute to the development and enrichment of our field. And we planned the activity in December during Slovenian presidency in Ljubljana. Well, to many people that were involved in the preparation and in the program of that one know that it was canceled due to COVID. And then we thought of postponing it until now, because we were waiting for a good time to have it in person. And finally, we decided that, well, that will wait, but we cannot wait to launch the Stakeholder Forum, which is what we're doing today. So it's a different format because it's just the launch. It's not the proper Stakeholder Forum, which we will organize with the stakeholders live, hopefully, later this year. This is my brief introduction, and I would like to pass the torch, basically invite to the floor Jean-Éric Paquet, Director General of DG Research and Innovation from European Commission.
Good morning, Jana. Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to open the forum together with you, Jana, and with many of you participating in this event. I'm particularly grateful for the many organizations which have accepted to actively contribute to this opening session. Research infrastructures have always been a success story of the European research area, but as was now just very well put by Jana, we have no doubt space to really bring our common work on research infrastructure to the next level, and in particular by ensuring that the decisions which are taken under the European Research Area Forum, the discussions which take place at strategic level by Director Generals in the European Research Area Committee, and then, of course, the work done in ESFRI is fully informed and interacting with the views of research infrastructure stakeholders. And as I think you all know, together with member states, the trio presidency, the outgoing one and the future one, we have a very wide view of research infrastructure stakeholders. It's of course you as key science providers in your major European infrastructures. I always say the best research infrastructures, science infrastructures in the world. We are collectively continuing to invest in new ones and in upgrading our amazing existing research infrastructures. We have more and more distributed research infrastructure, and there will be more European research infrastructure consortia being set up in the coming days and weeks. You are key players, but then what the forum will, what the stakeholder forum will really allow us to do is to create a place where research organizations, universities, and other key players in the European research area can effectively dialogue with research infrastructures, including industry players, so that we can collectively bring these amazing science actors collectively to the next level and fully feed into achieving the needed synergies so that European science propels us into the future. So Jana, thank you very much, and much looking forward to hearing all categories of stakeholders tell us today how they see the work in the forum. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jean-Éric. The next three welcomes come from the trio of presidencies, starting with the current presidency, France. We have with us Cyril Molan, Head of Department for Scientific Strategy from the French Ministry for Higher Education, Research and Innovation.
Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the French Presidency of the European Council, I'm very happy and honored to welcome you in this high-level launch of Stakeholder Forum of ESFRI. I must say that the role of infrastructures in research and innovation has not stopped growing for years. The use of research infrastructures has become today an imperative condition for scientific competitiveness and international attractiveness. Research infrastructures illustrate the growing interdependence between national, European, and international research actors, and present an interdisciplinary character, which is increasingly marked because they concern all the scientific disciplines. Research infrastructure are also important actors of socio-economic development, in particular concerning industry involvement and technological sovereignty. The COVID-19 pandemic has demonstrated our society depends on research and innovation to find solutions to large-scale problems. Scientific and technological breakthrough, as well as the response to the great challenge of our time, require the use of research infrastructure at the highest level. The European Strategy Forum on Research Infrastructure brings together national government, scientific communities, and the European Commission to conduct common reflections on the European priorities, needs, and investments in the field of research infrastructures. It is very particularly necessary and important today when equipping Europe with infrastructures from groundbreaking research has become a true European endeavor, because no single state would be able to afford such research facilities. France has accompanied the development of national and European research infrastructure since more than 20 years. In parallel with the recent ESFRI Roadmap 2021, France has published this year its updated national roadmap of research infrastructure. It is the 5th edition of this roadmap, updated with the same regularity as the ESFRI roadmap and in coherence with the European orientations. This consistency between the national and European roadmaps contributes to harmonizing the national and European landscapes with the objective of creating a network of research infrastructure at the best international level that meets the needs of the scientific communities. France supports the development and consolidation of the European landscape of research infrastructure and is actually participating very actively in this process, being a member of more than 25% of the European infrastructure listed on the ESFRI roadmap. France welcomes this very timely initiative of ESFRI to start the closer and more structured dialogue with the stakeholders, because this is the best way to understand and to respond to the society expectation and to the need of the scientific communities. Interfaces between the academic and the economic worlds, public authorities and society, at the crossroad of research, innovation and higher education, European research infrastructures are fundamental players in mobilizing the forces of the European Union to prepare the Europe of tomorrow. The fact that we are transmitting this event from the studio in the Paris region at the campus of the Paris-Saclay University is a symbol of the Stakeholders Forum launch event. Higher education, research and innovation are concentrated here, illustrating how research infrastructure constitute the ideal vector for the transfer of knowledge and technologies to the socio-economic world. We are also very happy to host tomorrow the 20-year anniversary conference of the European Strategic Forum on Research Infrastructures in the premises of the Institut de France and under the high patronage of the Academy of Sciences, an emblematic place to the European of knowledge. This event is of particular importance because it will take stock of the achievements since the last 20 years of ESFRI existence, but it will also provide an insight into the future and the role that the European research infrastructure will play in further structuring of the European research area. The close dialogue with the stakeholders of the European research infrastructure is necessary, particularly in today's context. Now, as never before, we need to respond rapidly and precisely to the European needs in capacities to carry out cutting-edge science in order to provide the conditions in which science can help to solve the major challenges that the world is facing. With this, I thank you very much and I wish you a very fruitful forum. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the forthcoming presidency, we have with us Jan Hrušák, Special Envoy for Research Infrastructures from the Czech Ministry of Education, Youth and Sports.
Thank you, Jana. Dear colleagues, dear friends, I am addressing, as Jana said, you today on behalf of the Czech presidency. And I have to say that it's much easier to speak on behalf of the European Strategy Forum than it is to convey messages from national perspectives. And I have prepared a lot of text here, which I saw it's good to convey to you. On the other hand, there is not much new to be said, and during my chairmanship, I have tried to implement everything what I have learned back in the Czech Republic in the policy domain of research infrastructures to ESFRI. So I'm just in a very sketchy way commenting on few things that probably shall be said in the context of the Czech presidency, and I would like you to understand that stakeholder engagement, similarly as we are doing that in ESFRI, is very much under concern also at the Czech national policy. Over the last 2 decades in the Czech Republic, we have been developing a research infrastructure policy that was from very early on very much aligned or inspired by the ESFRI processes. We have designed a concept of a large research infrastructures, which means infrastructures of national importance, relevance, that serve the entire scientific community in one or even across several scientific disciplines. And this policy has been developed in very close collaboration and exchange with all the stakeholder communities represented in the Czech Republic. This has been done in a formalized or bit less formalized way. There were a lot of consultations. There is a council for large research infrastructures concerned, where all the national and international research infrastructures are represented. We have created a forum and exchange platform where we frequently communicate with research infrastructures. We have the days of large research infrastructures in the Czech Republic. So there are many means how we co-design together with the stakeholders our national policy. We are convinced that research infrastructures boost not only science and scientific excellence, but also contribute to the competitiveness of our economy. And this not only at the national level, but also internationally. We also believe, and this is a quite important statement, that research infrastructures are also very important drivers in the regional and macro-regional development. And therefore, we have made investments into research infrastructures, the kernel of our regional development policy. And again, with very close interaction with the relevant stakeholders, we have been designing, for example, operational programs in the past, already 2007, that brought to the disposal of our research communities more than €2.5 billion additional costs, and 1/3 of them was attributed to investment into research infrastructures. By using this money, we have developed and designed a lot of infrastructure projects. Some of them might be familiar to you. So we've created, with the means of the structural funds, the elite beamline facility. We've designed the Czech National Road to Praise, IT for Innovation. There was a lot of investment done into BioSEF, the national nodes of bioimaging, infrafrontier, and so on. Large money went to Brno, to SEITEC, to an environment where many research infrastructures are placed and developed and rooted. And by the way, we have also funded through this large additional investment of the structural funds, a very nice thing that is now developing into a concept of place-based innovation, and Brno is set a very nice example for this. We have also invested a lot of money into Czech Globe or Resetox infrastructure that is now a kernel of the newly developed research infrastructure on the ESFRI roadmap, Irene. We continue funding research infrastructures, and again with the deep involvement of the stakeholder communities, not only the scientists, but also through sectorial platforms where we discuss with the stakeholders from related policy areas. And so we have co-designed an operational program, research, development, and education that with additional 2.7 billion euros strengthens the capacity of our research and innovation system. So why I'm saying that? This is because the Czech presidency focuses, based on this mentioned past experience, on two priorities, namely research infrastructures and synergies between the various funding instruments. And these two priorities will accompany us for the next half year of the Czech presidency. I'm not going into many detail, but I would like to invite you to come to the Czech Republic to discuss with us further, to discuss with our stakeholders, either at the ESFRI conference, the International Conference on Research Infrastructures that will be held in Brno, or you may also attend the conference in Prague on the occasion of the discussion about synergies funding instruments. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. The last from the three presidency is Secretary General for Research Infrastructures from the Swedish Research Council, Ms. Lisbeth Olsen.
Thank you for the introduction. I'm happy to talk to you on behalf of the Swedish presidency. This is my first ESFRI meeting. I'm a new delegate, and I'm also recently started my assignment as Secretary General for Research Infrastructure, a very interesting task, of course. In Sweden, we have made a governmental investigation on the organization of our research infrastructure and the national research infrastructure. And here there has been different suggestions on how to develop in the future. And I want to say a few words on how the Swedish Research Council look at how we can develop research infrastructure and how we can make best use of the funding that is available and how we can reach stakeholders in a good way. And a starting point for this is that we need to work closely between research, funding research and funding research infrastructure, because research infrastructure will not be there if we don't want to achieve things in research. And on the other hand, we cannot achieve our goals in research if we don't have access to cutting edge research infrastructure. And some of the challenges here is that we need to have a very long-term perspective. And that was one of the reasons why there was made this governmental investigation and pointing to some possibilities on how to develop to ensure attractiveness, long-term development and sustainable research infrastructures. So in addressing the outcome of this investigation from the point of a funding agency and how we work, we want to develop in taking in broader views on when we look at research infrastructure and how we divide our funding. And here the interaction between the university management has been important for us for a long term, as they also contribute significantly to the funding that is necessary for the research infrastructure. However, we have other stakeholders that we have not have the same tradition to work together with. That is, for instance, Research Institute. When it comes to the health area, our healthcare system is arranged in regions, and we don't have the same interactions with them, but they are important from research infrastructure point of view. And of course, industrial needs should also be taken into account. The investigation and the reasoning about starting a governmental authority only working on research infrastructure was also pointing to that we needed other ways of working. However, this approach is something that we as a funding agency don't think would enable the close relation between research and research infrastructure. The investigation also suggested that the universities should be able to work closer and make priorities among themselves. But our discussions with universities also points to that the funding agency has a good and important role in putting out strategies on how to develop in the long term. That is important for our future development. Something that we feel is very urgent and important for the research infrastructure is also to start a e-infrastructure authority that can help in collecting questions around e-infrastructure that goes also to challenges as security of data, sharing data. So that is something that we hope that can be organized in relatively near future. So this leads me to come to say a few words about the Swedish presidency. The priorities from the minister side is to discuss open data, security and contra openness, and also frame it among academic freedom and its principles. So this is one of the themes that we in Sweden will arrange a conference around, where we will talk about data exploitation as a resource for society and test beds. And that will, of course, also touch on research infrastructure questions. So around this event, we also hope to be able to put up other important stakeholder events, and we would be very happy to also host a ESFRI meeting in connection with this conference that will take place in Lund, where we have two of our very large infrastructure, and that is ASS and MAX 4. That we have been building up the last 10-20 years, and that now are progressing in a very nice way. So with this, I want to end, and I'm very much looking forward to meet you all in person in coming ESFRI meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisbeth, very much. And I hope I'll be able to welcome you at our next ESFRI meeting. Now, with this, we are at the end at the introductory messages, and I'm passing now the floor to Jean-Éric, who will moderate the discussion with the high-level stakeholders. Jean-Éric.
Thank you, Jana. Thank you very much. And indeed, we have a rather amazing lineup of colleagues which, like myself, are used to speak in such events, and we are used to speak longer than you will have. So let me just underline that. It's 19 of you now contributing to that second part of the meeting. Again, we are, Jana and myself, really super grateful to have you with us. I hope everyone will be able to speak, including the last speakers, Robert McGreevy, Jean Dayan, on behalf of Lens and Leaves. You are the last two. So put pressure on the speakers with me to ensure that we can indeed complete that rather spectacular list, which starts with Antoine Petit. Antoine, si tu es déjà à l'écran. Bonjour Antoine. who is, of course, the president of CNRS. We all know that, but he's also the current G6 chair. And I think you're speaking, Antoine, in that capacity. Et tu as donc 3 minutes.
Merci beaucoup. Hello, everybody. So I try to be fast. So on behalf of the G6 members, I really thank you for this invitation to this high-level event for the launch of the ESFRI Stakeholder Forum. Let me perhaps remind you that the G6 is the informal network of 6 fundamental and interdisciplinary European research performing organizations, namely Helmholtz, Leibniz, and Max Planck in Germany, CNR in Italy, CSIC in Spain, and CNRS in France. These 6 organizations lead the way in terms of interdisciplinary research, networks, and skills. We decided to reinforce our scientific cooperation around a number of general shared principles, which can be summarized in funding science is investing in the future. There is no alternative to scientific excellence. Disruptive innovations depends on fundamental science. Cooperation is in the European DNA. Science nurtures good governance. And of course, European research relies on innovative pan-European research infrastructures. In order to maximize the effort of its scientific networks, G6 decided to approach and debate the most important EU research files through some task forces. One is precisely entirely dedicated to research infrastructures. The idea moves the steps that's the key message of the 2021 edition of the ESFRI roadmap, which clearly underlines the importance of world-class research infrastructures in enabling cutting-edge research needed to address the pressing requests and challenges of our society. Let me briefly mention 4 key points for the G6. G6 considers research infrastructures as a strategic part of the European research area and not just as implementing operational research tools. G6 considers that infrastructures are essential to foster scientific cooperation. G6 considers that European infrastructures are key to attract international communities of talented scientists, and Europe is an ideal environment. And of course, G6 considers that there is a need of sufficient investment in existing infrastructure. To conclude, G6 is ready to play an active role in the ESFRI Stakeholder Forum to participate in future meetings, proposing scientific topics to be discussed, and proposing possible solutions to solve specific issues. Considering the large scientific communities that we represent, more than 135 staff overall, we are able to provide valuable input to better define the ESFRI strategy. Thank you.
Antoine, chapeau. This was both substantial and within the pitch allocated. Thank you so much, and for the mobilization of the G6 today and in the future in the forum. This is much appreciated. And I move to Gabi Lombardo. You are the director of the European Alliance of Social Sciences and Humanities. Gabi, over to you.
Yeah. Thank you very much for inviting us. We are European Alliance of Social Science and Humanities, the largest umbrella organization of social science and humanities in Europe, probably with over 200,000 researchers. Priorities. Our priorities are really the use. This big investment in research infrastructure doesn't stay on the shelf. It doesn't become a cathedral in the desert. So that's the priority, I think, we have as researchers to have access, transparent access and open access, and also standards, because at the moment, from what I see from not just my research community, but in general from many different research communities across Europe, is that there's not always so straightforward. So ESFRI is a very well confined discussion among the ESFRI family, but researchers don't seem to be as involved as it should. And I think very important as well is that this infrastructure become, first of all, interoperable from within sometimes, because they have very much a national focus with national standards. So that's not very helpful. We need to be a lot more open on that. Even interoperable in between. I mean, we're having discussion at the moment with some health associations, which social data and health association are really important to understand how our society is developing. And more important, the development of this infrastructure has to be interoperable. They said to be, has to be autopoietic. And it means learning from the researchers, learning from those that use it. So the feedback has to be both ways. And therefore connect and develop with the develop according to the needs of the research community, first and most importantly. So as issue, we just made ourselves available, and happily so. We already had a conversation with SHOCK, for example, the cluster for social science humanities. So we have a full research infrastructure in our associations. And very much we want to play as a bridge between the researchers on a very capillary way, all the way to the larger association and the specific services that this infrastructure can help our researcher to work. If I look how much research infrastructure are partnering or supporting European projects at the moment, the numbers seem to be scarce, and I'm not just talking again about our disciplines. And therefore, we also wanted to bring to the table not just the researcher to research infrastructure, but also vice versa. We want to also bring those infrastructure to research which are probably, first of all, outside ESFRI, and also probably too small sometimes even for the national funding. Because it's kind of important as well to bring it into consideration, this support to research, which are not yet identified. I've been working on a workshop, for example, on behavior labs, and yeah, they sometimes get not seen for their entity because they're not big enough and not coordinated. So we're available, we're happy to contribute and participate, and thank you so much for inviting us.
Gabi, thank you for also a well-timed and compact intervention. User-centric, research-centric infrastructures makes so much sense. And your last comment, I think, is also important. There are many research infrastructures which are not necessarily visible at EU level, and are, of course, key players in the broader ecosystem. I now move to a rather large group, and grateful for your interest, of university representatives. And I start with the Guild and its chair, Vincent Blondel. Vincent, over to you.
Yes, hello everyone, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me here, and thank you, Director General Jean-Éric Paquet. So I'll be very quick, and I'll make 5 points, and 5 points that have no connection to funding, but rather to other aspects of ESFRI. I'd like 1 point is the fact that the ESFRI label given to infrastructure has a value by itself. So it identifies the infrastructure are identified as being potentially game changer for research at the world level. So it's the label is by itself is important. Second point, I think that this is an enormous motivating factor for teams that are concerned, and it's a way also to strengthen the scientific community around infrastructure. A third point is that an added value also is the necessity of having uniformed and standardized technical protocols that are associated to this infrastructure, and it's also a benefit by itself. So this is a third benefit that is not just related to the financial aspect. And fourth, certainly, and this has also been said before, it gives, of course, visibility, it gives legitimacy, and that helps to improve access for other fundings, of course, at European level, but also at the national level for additional funding, in addition on top of the one that is associated with it. And finally, I'd like to stress something that to me is quite important, which is the fact that, of course, when there is an investment in infrastructure, there is often a very long-term investment. Many of these infrastructures are there for a long period of time, and this is particularly needed, I believe, at European level, where, of course, we are under constant stress, and we live in a time of immediacy. if you identify something on which you invent, and it can be, of course, the funding can be within the framework program, but actually it gives a signal that goes well beyond some of these infrastructure needs support for a really long term. And so it helps to identify these long-term projects in science that are needed and that are not just connected to the latest tweet or the latest scientific question. So it helps to identify these long-term projects. So I think these are 5 very important aspects of ESFRI. Thank you very much for having me here.
Merci, Vincent. And indeed, I think policymakers occasionally like longer term projects as well, because they are in contrast. And this, I think, explains why in Europe we've been quite good at national level, but also collectively in these investments. But it's an important point of attention, as is indeed the facilitating the access to these infrastructures, including remotely. I'm sure this will come in other contributions as well. I now move to the European University Association with Stefan Bergman, Director for Research and Innovation there. Stefan.
Merci, Jean-Éric. I am very happy to be with you today representing the European University Association with its 800 plus universities and 34 National Rectors Conference. But let me say that I also have a personal link with ESFRI. Over 10 years ago, when I was at the European Science Foundation, we supported the initiation of ECRIN, one of the 41 ESFRI landmarks. But enough about me and more about EUA and ESFRI. In our, start video, I don't know, that's not for me, I guess.
No, you need to start it in principle.
There you go. So in our vision 2030 for universities, which EUA published last year, we envision universities without walls. These are universities that are open. Okay, so I guess that's, okay, thank you. I got it now. So these are universities that are open and engaged in society. So in this decade, universities will provide an open, transformative space for common knowledge production through research, through education, innovation, and culture. And this vision includes, of course, developing, maintaining, hosting, running, and nurturing research infrastructures at universities. So we at EUA and the university sector have many reasons to welcome the creation of the ESFRI Stakeholder Forum, as we have collaborated with ESFRI for a long time already. And we much look forward to continuing collaborating in the context of the new era, which also now engages structurally with stakeholders, and of course, in the context of this ESFRI new Stakeholder Forum. As Jenna highlighted, it already in the opening, the role of university facilities and services in local, regional, national, but also European R&I ecosystems will need to continue to be taken into account. So EUA will continue to support the continued efforts towards a world-class landscape of research infrastructure in Europe. And due to the increasingly data-intensive nature of research, or just to achieve open science, for example, Europe and its universities need an information infrastructure to facilitate cross-border, multidisciplinary research with advanced digital services and tools. But it's not only for research. Our recent survey on innovation at universities has shown that more than 7 out of 10 universities already have a strategy reflecting a clear innovation agenda. You'll be glad to hear that among the most cited areas of innovation strategies are infrastructure, for example, for prototype generation. Yet the absence of dedicated infrastructure is still perceived as an institutional challenge or even sometimes an obstacle. So contrary to Vincent, I'll say that adequate investments are obviously needed to meet the challenges of this decade. And additional investments in research infrastructure will be crucial. Horizon Europe, but also national programs must empower the stakeholders with supportive measures to build capacity in the infrastructures. This includes both physical and digital infrastructure, by the way, so that universities, students, and society at large can fully benefit. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Stefan. Indeed, I think the research, the university-based research infrastructures need to be fully part of that discussion. I don't know if you mentioned that now alliances per se, but that is, of course, an obvious component as well for many of us. Thank you. And I now move to the Coimbra group with its chair, Ludovic Tilly. Bonjour Ludovic.
Bonjour Jean-Ric. Good afternoon to all. I hope you can hear me well.
We can.
So, well, first, let me thank you for this opportunity to reflect on the crucial role of research infrastructures that are key instruments for research-led universities composing Coimbra Group. My intervention is based on the consultation of our working groups related to research activities in SSH, life science and STEM fields, but also on the Coimbra Group high-level seminar on research policy organized in 2016 with rectors and vice rectors for research on research infrastructures. And it is important to note that the conclusion at that time are still valid. First, we welcome the intention to look beyond the traditional research infrastructures communities and the interest in raising awareness across the whole research and innovation ecosystem, including universities. Indeed, not every institution or even every country can justify investing in the specialized knowledge, data, labs, and equipment that certain disciplines and communities require. That is why we think research infrastructures represent such an important instrument. Silos don't make for good science, not in terms of knowledge, not in terms of sources. Comprehensive universities such as the 41 forming our Coimbra Group facilitate access to research infrastructures for many interdisciplinary researchers. This is why we believe that universities should remain at the very foundation of ESFRI. We also share its entire mission covering the whole knowledge square, research, innovation, education, and service to society. However, we believe that the current European roadmap and national equivalents remains quite far away from the daily work of researchers. At the moment, small and medium research infrastructures hosted at our universities play a very relevant role, but do not receive enough attention at EU level. The institutions themselves have to invest in the maintenance of these infrastructures with their own budget or with national financial resources. There seems to be more European funding available for large infrastructures than for smaller ones, in which universities are very present as operators, funders, users, developers, or even owners. Moreover, large infrastructure often require a long-term program. It has been mentioned before. It is very difficult for university to plan this far in advance, especially around operational costs, which limits future opportunities. More resources should also be directed towards supporting university staff required to manage facilities in order to improve professional management, business outreach, knowledge of the market, etc. We need to consider that an academic facility operates differently than a commercial facility. We cannot forget about fundamental and basic research, including the SSH, which needs to be systematically integrated in research and innovation strategy. There are many excellent examples of SSH research infrastructures at Coimbra Group members directly connected to broader research community, to industry for the development of applications, and to public dissemination. So yes, I confirm there is an urgent necessity to place universities in the very heart of the research infrastructure ecosystem. Thank you.
And you are very much on it, Ludovic. Thank you for that statement. And I think university alliances will certainly be act as including to ensure critical mass between universities in these investments, but connecting it to the ESFRI work will add a lot of value. I now move to LERU, the League of European Research Universities, with Andy Mount. Andy.
Merci, Jean-Ric. Thank you very much. So I represent the League of European Research Universities, the 23 research intensive universities in Europe. And just let me start by saying thank you very much for the invitation. I would like to say that I think I'm building on previous people's comments that universities host and utilize a vibrant ecosystem of research infrastructures, from small to large scale across disciplines, not only in physical form, but in electronic or virtual form, taking up Lisbeth's point. So I think thinking about data-driven post-pandemic society, it's wise not to forget the infrastructures, the data storage, the use, storage, selling, transfer of data through those infrastructures and how we effectively interlink it. Certainly, Larry's been doing a lot of work in research infrastructures, which continues, and we believe that research infrastructures, regardless of their size, are vital for universities. They're good for developing collaborations and increasing the efficiency of research development and innovation through place-based development. And certainly, ESFRI and European support of research infrastructure is very welcome. There are issues around widening access and removing barriers for academic and industrial researchers, but real opportunities in challenge, mission, strategic areas. And I guess what we're also saying is the opportunity is not just for large labs, but as others have pointed out before, also for medium-sized laboratories and potentially also smaller laboratories. So in terms of the work we've done, I think in 2017, we started work around thinking about these medium-sized research infrastructures, which we define as up to 10 million euro initial cost or 1 to 5 million euro annual cost. And we really thought about the things that are needed in terms of funding mechanisms to make these sustainable, mechanisms to encourage cooperation across borders, to avoid unnecessary duplication, supporting actions to create a robust and better connected European network, and really making sure that as an academic community, we are really playing a leading role in planning and operating these infrastructures. And we also talked about the golden principles of transparency of information and policies sort of embedded in existing organizations and clear indicators, KPIs for operational and scientific excellence. So absolutely, we're keen to be engaged. We see the challenges, some of the challenges that others have talked around about alignment, national versus international alignment, but those provide really opportunities to get them right. Bridging the awareness gap between national and universities and creating clear guidance on who leads and when, and really just thinking about the role of these medium universities in the wider medium infrastructure in these wider ecosystem, and how we can harness mechanisms for a maximized impact, and particularly thinking around funding mechanisms. So delighted to be involved and engaged in thinking about these challenges and opportunities going forward.
Great, Andy, thank you so much, and for indeed confirming and echoing many of the views of university representatives. I think you will be all of you a particularly dynamic group in the forum. So we really very much count on your proactive participation and inputs. And that is the case, of course, also for the Conference of European Schools for Advanced Engineering Education and Research, better known as CESAR, and represented Katharina by you, Katharina Egenberger.
Thank you very much. Dear ESFRI delegates, dear representatives of the European Commission, dear colleagues and friends of the ESFRI Stakeholder Forum. It is a great pleasure to be here for the launch of the ESFRI Stakeholder Forum. The universities of science and technology united within CESAR are prepared and dedicated to engaging in this forum. We plea for full engagement of this forum in the following 3 objectives of Action 8 of the European Research Area Policy Agenda. First, to develop a streamlined methodology for the strategic analysis of the European research infrastructure landscape as an evidence-based framework for the ESFRI roadmaps. Second, to revise the European Charter of Access to Research Infrastructures. And third, to update the ESFRI roadmap methodology and implement the performance monitoring framework. The main message we convey today is that infrastructures hosted by or directly related to universities are the very foundation of ESFRI infrastructures and the pillars of the European Open Science Cloud. Hence, universities are ESFRI's and EOSC's most important partners to advance scientific and technological excellence to the benefit of society at large. We welcome that from now on, universities become engaged in the governance of ESFRI infrastructures on equal terms. The members of CESAR are crucial in reaching ESFRI's 3 main objectives. The first objective is to enable cross-disciplinary research and to benefit of the growing data interoperability. The second is to engage in deep and meaningful dialogues with the scientific communities. And the third overarching objective is to develop and facilitate the implementation of an open, sustainable, and at the same time future-oriented infrastructure system for research, innovation, and education. Concluding, dear ESFRI delegates, dear representatives of the European Commission, dear colleagues and friends, we see the ESFRI Stakeholder Forum as an active partner involved in all ESFRI decision-making processes. Representatives of our universities are ready to continue getting engaged in the work which lies ahead of ESFRI. Thank you for your attention and very much looking forward to working with you.
Great, Katharina, thank you. I must say, when we work on the European research area and its actors, wherever we look, you are everywhere, universities, and obviously so. So very much looking forward to have you as full actors in this forum. So we now change category. We go more towards industry, where we have two interventions, starting with someone who doesn't need an introduction, Antti Vasara, the president of ERTO. Antti.
Merci beaucoup, Jean-Eric. Good afternoon from me as well, and thank you for the chance to make a short intervention on behalf of ERTO. RTOs are organizations whose core mission is to produce, harness, and combine various types of knowledge, skills, and infrastructures to improve the quality of life and to build economic competitiveness. Importantly, we do this applied research and technological development very much in collaboration with public and industrial partners of all sizes. RTOs have a dual task in their public mission. First, we must be able to deliver technology of high maturity level to our industrial and public partners. At the same time, we need to be constantly developing more disruptive long-term technology-based solutions to future needs. As a consequence, we need to invest, upgrade, and operate a large range of both research infrastructures and technology infrastructures for open innovation and innovation environments and ecosystems. It's worth to repeat the definition of technology infrastructure that has been adopted by Commission. Technology infrastructures, TIs, are physical or virtual facilities and equipment such as demonstrators, test beds, piloting facilities, and living labs. They are used to develop, mature, test, demonstrate, and upscale technology to advance through industrial research and experimental development activities, from proof of concept to technology validation. On research and technology infrastructures, RTOs collaborate very closely with universities, especially within common innovation ecosystems where we both operate. But so far, the dialogue of RTOs with ESFRI has been marginal and guided occasionally by the individual research ventures' needs. And this is, of course, understandable, since ESFRI's mission is focused on research infrastructures, whereas technology infrastructures are more focused on the higher TRL phases of development and technology transfer with the industry overall. In that sense, the processes and governance of technology infrastructures can't be identical to those of ESFRI and need to involve also different stakeholders. It's, of course, widely recognized that ESFRI colleagues have done excellent and highly valued work for a long time, and this can be an inspiration for us all. We strongly believe that RIs and TIs are complementary, and there should be a European investment strategy also in technology infrastructures, which is as large as ESFRI is for research infra. Furthermore, when TI investment strategy is developed, we believe more opportunities for strategic RI-TI collaborations will also naturally rise. A common exchange space still needs to be built, and TIs and RIs need to learn to talk common language as well. In the end, they are both important part of the European level innovation ecosystem, and they both deliver high quality deep tech services for both our customers and the scientific community. And thanks for the ability and chance to present here.
Brilliant. Antti, thank you so much, and indeed for highlighting the mission of research organizations across Europe, and specifically focusing on technology infrastructures. They complement, they sometimes also overlap to an extent with research infrastructure. So this is, I think, going to be a particularly important conversation in the forum. So already really looking forward to working with you and your teams. I now move to Judith A. Judith is Policy Director at the European Roundtable for Industry. Judith, over to you. I don't hear you.
Can you hear me? Can you see me?
Now you're, yeah. Can you try again to speak?
I will try again. Can you hear me?
Yes, now I hear you. Thank you.
Good, good. Prime example for infrastructure is also important for, yes, technology. So thank you very much for letting me speak at your event. Maybe very quickly, a few words on the ERT. The European Roundtable for Industry is a member-led association where our members are 60 CEOs or chairs of Europe's leading industrial companies. We are a cross-sectoral association, and that means that we focus on horizontal issues. And of those horizontal issues, competitiveness and innovation are one of the core ones. Maybe then also very quickly to underline, we are, of course, as industry, a consumer or a user of research and innovation, but we're also a producer, given that we do collaborate in a lot of research collaborations, including also, I think, with ESFRI members, with universities and different ecosystems. Maybe there are a couple of words I would like to share with you. And I think from our perspective, what matters very, very much is that Europe creates or maintains an environment in which innovation and research can thrive. Because from our perspective, research and innovation, and then of course also the ability to bring innovation up to scale, are absolutely key for Europe's prosperity and also for its place in the world. And I think the current developments in Russia, Ukraine, also vis-a-vis China, can only underline that. Maybe on that perspective, let me also add a few concerns and trends of things we observe. And that is firstly, that across sectors, technology is becoming increasingly sophisticated. So that is great. But also globally, the pace of innovation is accelerating. And that also then means that successful innovation is becoming increasingly cross-disciplinary and also increasingly resource intensive. And these are remarks that previous speakers have already made. Also, and I think this is even more critical, successful innovation and competitiveness today are the determinants of successful innovation and competitiveness tomorrow. Once you fall behind, it is extremely difficult to actually catch up. So we are having a spiral effect that can go in a good direction or in a bad direction. In any case, it's accelerating. And there are, of course, two other areas which are important to keep in mind, and that is that for Europe's twin transition, I would say all the solutions we need for these challenges in both cases are highly innovation driven and innovation and research intensive. If we look at it now, maybe quickly from an economic perspective, because I don't only work for industry, I'm also an economist. If we look at our input as Europe, and I'm now saying Europe and not only EU, we have a huge advantage in the sense that we have probably globally the highest number of researchers, of scientific researchers. And half of them, roughly half of them, are coming from the private sector, meaning including our members, and the other half would be public and industry, public and university located. So that is the great news. By the way, just after Europe comes China, and after China comes the EU. So just to keep that in mind. What we, however, observe, and now we come to the output perspective, is that if you want to measure the, let's say, the output of research and innovation, you can look at patent applications, because it gives you a very good idea on the ability to provide innovative solutions to current and future problems. And there are, for example, for the two areas of research we need very much to meet the twin transition challenges, meaning ICT and biotechnology, there are some worrisome trends. For example, if we look at the ICT sector, in terms of patent applications, Europe has sort of stagnated between 2007 and 2018. I'm quick, but we're only on 4th rank. And on biotechnology, we actually are decreasing and become second after the US, and as EU, 3rd. What does it bring me to? It brings me to saying that we very much support all the calls for a very clear research agenda, also for the long term. We support very much the calls for a good research infrastructure. And we also support all cooperation and scaling up of the resources we have. And that, of course, includes then also the cooperation between corporates and research institutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you very much. I mean, cross-disciplinarity was again highlighted by you. I think that's important. I think for research infrastructures, agility and efficiency to be relevant for industry, I think is certainly a dimension which has not always been central, and will no doubt also be part of the discussions in the forum, as is the twin transition, directionality, but that's an overriding cross-cutting item of the European research area. Good. Now that we spoke about research infrastructures, now we will hear research infrastructures, and we will have a few very important usual suspects. I'm delighted to welcome you on behalf of the ERIC Forum, and that is Francesco Colomer. Back over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jan-Erik. Thank you, delegates, for the invitation to participate in this important initiative, which seeks to bring together in regular discussions all the stakeholders related to ESFRI. So the ERIC Forum is a bottom-up collaboration of the European Research Infrastructure Consortia, the ERICs, which are the operators of many pan-European research infrastructures. Currently, there are 23 established ERICs, and there are others in preparation, and they are organized in the 5 clusters of ESFRI. So health and life sciences, environment, physics and engineering, social sciences and humanities, and energy. And most of the ERIC's research infrastructures are included in the ESFRI roadmap. So for the engagement with the member states who are the owners of the ERICs, ESFRI and the ERIC committee are beautiful platforms for important discussions and decisions with direct impact on the research infrastructures themselves. Mm-hmm. It is therefore essential to maintain a profound and continuous dialogue between ESFRI and the ERICs, and the ERIC Forum provides a great opportunity of coordinated and transparent engagement, thanks to the solid governance and to the ambitious program. The ERIC Forum will provide then specific input on the analysis of the research infrastructures landscape, and also on challenges, such as sustainability of research infrastructures, monitoring, visibility, services, and direct links to the user community. So allow me, within my 3 minutes, allow me to highlight some of these challenges. And they have been many identified in the recent report of the expert group study on the ERICs, the EG-ERIC report. So on the roles of ERICs, the need of awareness and recognition of the member states, of the importance of ERICs, acknowledging the added value of the pan-European cooperation, which provides research infrastructures that would not be possible by any country alone. Including the landscape analysis of the research infrastructures, the option of upgrading and strengthening existing ERICs, as well as creating new ones. The member states may encourage concrete operational collaborations, synergies between ERICs in which they are involved, both in each of the domains, but also in cross-domain. And the national partnership in the ERICs can be made more visible within the national policy and funding actors. So the institutes and the universities, which have been mentioned many times today, who are hosting nodes of these ERICs are properly recognized and properly supported. Make the ERICs then more visible are important also for the national research communities, therefore to facilitate user access and facilitate user support. Now, on the efficiency functioning of the ERICs, well, we know that VAT exemption is a very important tool. It would be important to have it not only for the ERIC hub, but also for the nodes and the partners in each one of the member states. And this is a good forum for that. Facilitate the mobility of the experts in ERICs by more attractive hiring, like, for example, European contracts. On the sustainability funding, support the research infrastructures well beyond their creation during the whole life cycle, and ensure the eligibility of the ERICs in the national funding sources. It's a nice list of ambitions, actions that all the ERICs and the member states in ESFRI and the ERIC Commission, the ERIC Committee and the European Commission are to work together. So with ERICs and the ERIC Forum, look forward to exploiting the opportunity that the ESFRI Stakeholders Forum provides. And thank you very much for this opportunity.
Marco, thank you so much. You are an absolute central key player in the exercise ahead of us. And thanks for indeed covering the main features of the expert group. Excellent work. Francesco Sette, you are the chair of the Aero Forum. And of course, you are leading ESRF as well. Francesco, over to you.
Hi, Jean-Eric. I cannot start the video.
We see a nice picture of your facility, but not yourself, indeed.
Right.
But go ahead, go ahead.
Okay.
Now we see you.
Okay, now it works. So thank you very much for inviting me in this role of representing Euroforum. You know, Euroforum is a partnership between Europe's largest intergovernmental scientific organizations. We operate in various areas of science, but we have a lot of common threads. And the first one is excellent science, but of course, with that goes commitment to society, sound governance, and to be predominantly funded by European member states. All our organizations are really established on the European principles of scientific cooperation across borders as a driver for peaceful growth and democracy of our societies. These values these days, as you can imagine, have been strongly reaffirmed by all international council of our Euroforum Institute in a context that we all know of the aggression of Ukraine by the Russian Federation. Therefore, today, more than ever, scientific cooperation and dialogue among European research infrastructure must be strengthened. And in that sense, Euroforum really welcomes this initiative of the ESFRI Stakeholder Forum. We see it as a truly powerful way forward to strengthen interaction among research infrastructure, enable excellent science, and channel European core values. We all look forward to engage on European science policy initiatives and all matters related to international scientific cooperation in our domain, the construction and strengthening of the ERA, and also I think it's very important to underline the role of research infrastructure in developing the citizens' awareness of the value of science in our model of society and of its future. We also strongly believe on the European values as a way to open to the rest of the world. If you want a civilization power at the place of nuclear power. We need to strengthen our activities for showing how strong is the relation between the needs of the society of tomorrow to the needs of science of today. And, you know, the COVID-19 post-pandemic is a clear example for that. So we look forward to interact with the ESFRI Forum and with the other research infrastructure and the other stakeholders that we have heard today in many important areas, citing, for example, innovation and technology transfer. We just heard about it, you know, sharing ideas on technology transfer, IP issues, trademark policy. As an example is the Big Science Business Forum that will take place in Granada this October. Scientific data policy and handling, information technology and European Open Science Cloud. This is really fundamental that we all work together to promote European excellence in specific IT areas. And again, I want to remind the important commitment that we have to the science education with the citizens and with the next generation of scientists and engineers to really promote the importance of science to make our society grow in a peaceful manner. So we need to provide engaging teaching materials, and more than ever, we need to strengthen the interaction between the RIs to communicate with citizens how science addresses key societal challenges such health, pandemics, environment, and energy. And indeed, I want to really end with this pressing issue of the addressing the environmental issues and the climate change challenges that are on our heart more than ever. Thank you.
Grazie, Francesco. Thank you very much. This was also extremely substantial and naturally so in your capacity. I now move to Andrew Harrison, who is chair of the Association of European Level Research Infrastructure Facilities. Andrew, for you and then speakers after you, we are drifting a little bit on the 3 minutes. So if you could try to bring us back on course, that would be appreciated. Andrew, over to you. And I don't hear you yet, but I'm sure it will come. Now we just had you, I think. Try again.
You got me?
Yeah, we do.
Okay, sorry about that. So
No
actually reporting live from the meeting itself. I'll try and keep it quick. So for us, the central challenge is one of engagement, effective engagement, wide and effective engagement of RIs with the entire research ecosystem. And we heard one previous delegate talk about the old model of RIs as being the cathedral in the desert, built by experts, used by experts. We've come a long way since then. We've greatly increased the range of engagement with communities that didn't traditionally use us. But we think there's an awful lot more distance to make up there to explore further the range of potential users. Researchers who still have no idea that the value we can offer them. But with that also comes a challenge. As we broaden our reach, we increasingly interact with communities that are no longer experts. And what we need to do for them is to develop the tools that allow them to transform the data that we offer them into knowledge and results. So a key element here is to develop the range of services that we offer. It's not simply sufficient to open our doors, but we must ensure that our users take away solutions to problems. And then finally, what I would say is that the traditional model, which has researchers still working in their silos in very specific areas, again, has to be broadened. To solve increasingly complex societal problems, we need to bring together results from across infrastructures, which means not just interoperability of data, but actually a true broader understanding about what the contributions of infrastructures from completely different domains can be, and connect all of that together. I'll stop there.
Oh. Andrew, perfect. Thank you very, very much on format, but also on content, putting indeed the user-centric nature on the forefront again. I couldn't agree more. And I like this idea also that the research infrastructures could team up in providing indeed different angles, transdisciplinary approaches, which would help science move forward. Quite a lot would have research infrastructure communities in a short moment. I'm sure this will be echoed there. But before that, we now have one particular and particularly important research infrastructure, which is EOSC. And we have, as member of the board of EOSC, Bob Jones. Bob, over to you.
Good afternoon. Indeed, users and data are the core objective of the European Open Science Cloud, where we consider research infrastructures as research big data factories. The European Open Science Cloud, or EOSC for short, is working with research infrastructures to increase the impact of that data by making it findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. That's to say, making it fair, so it is more useful to researchers from many disciplines and to society in general. With more than 200 member and all observer organizations, the recently created EOSC Association continues to grow. In excess of 20 national and international research infrastructures participate in the association and contribute to implementing the EOSC strategic and research innovation agenda, with 13 task forces currently active. EOSC is also engaging with the research infrastructures via a series of Horizon 20 and Horizon Europe projects, including the science clusters, that are developing use cases to verify the advances defined in the strategic research innovation agenda. An urgent priority for EOSC is the onboarding of high-value data sets and associated services coming from the research infrastructures that can be promoted and shared more widely via EOSC. Using these test cases examples, together research infrastructures and EOSC can collectively promote a culture of open science within Europe. Research infrastructures and EOSC should intensify the dialogue on sustainability of the federation of data and services to ensure they have a lifetime that matches and potentially exceeds that of the instruments themselves. With that, say thank you very much and saying that IOSC Association is looking forward to participating in this forum.
You're going to be a key player. There is no doubt about that. And indeed, the open science standards, protocols, approaches are essential for research infrastructure, but they in turn are your champions as well. So there's here a particularly fruitful interaction. And thanks a lot for your presentation and EOSC's broad participation to the forum. We now have 4 research communities which will come in. And I start with life sciences with Niklas Blomberg, coordinator of the European Open Science Cloud LIFE project.
Thank you very much for my opportunity to participate here. And today I represent the whole life science research infrastructure community through our joint cluster project. The first point I'd like to make, so life science research infrastructures are distributed. So all our national nodes and facilities are indeed hosted both within national and university facilities across Europe. And then I'd like to contribute, I think, 2 items for the discussion in the ESFRI Stakeholder Forum from the perspective of these distributed research infrastructures. So the first, one of our learnings is that the data services from EOSC Life been used extensively in the response to the COVID pandemic in providing data resources, workflow systems, and that really is underpinning a lot of the national centers and research projects. We also see how that is now being moved to support the new missions and helping to access facilities across Europe. And so one learning I'd like to bring to the ESFRI Stakeholder Forum, and where I hope it can really play a key role in facilitating discussion on how these research infrastructure services are used and the costs being recovered within these European wide programs, because there is a very large number of facilities in these distributed infrastructures, and we need to find effective mechanisms where the researchers can move between universities to facilities in other countries and get the costs recovered. The second item I'd like to bring to the ESFRI Stakeholder Forum is really to say, so we are developing services for a federated infrastructure around, say, sensitive human data, but I think we will see the same concerns coming up in social sciences. And for reasons of trust and security, data will often need to stay at the center where it's being generated. So the analysis needs to travel to the data. We could call this data visits, but also distributed data and national oversight is of course important for data sovereignty and the trusts of the citizens. And so we're launching the first nodes of this sort of federated infrastructure in May. But actually, if we think about it, the long-term sort of sustainability and life cycle management of European data services, these needs to be built and operated nationally at research institutes, at universities across Europe. And these are also the nodes in the distributed ESFRI research infrastructures. So I hope ESFRI really can have a key role in facilitating the alignment between all the actors in this ecosystem, the universities, the research infrastructures, the national funders, and the policymakers, and support the long-term operations of these federated infrastructures. So with that, I'll stop, and I thank you for the opportunity to contribute.
Niklas, thank you very much. This was also very, very substantial, echoes in part what we have heard, but also puts it really into a great framework. So certainly one agenda setting contribution for the forum, including cost recovery. I mean, Horizon Europe plays a small part here, but I think we need a much broader conversation. I mean, university alliances are certainly one platform as well, which will be relevant in that regard. And I move to Andreas Petzold, a coordinator of the ENVRI, I suppose, Environment Research Infrastructure FAIR project. Andreas.
Dear Eric, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you on behalf of the environmental research infrastructures, and to say it clearly as a convinced and long-term supporter of the idea of research infrastructures, especially from my background of an atmospheric scientist. So the European environmental research infrastructures on the ESFRI level are the core facilities for providing data, products, and services from all segments of the Earth system. That includes atmosphere, ocean, solid Earth, and ecosystems, terrestrial ecosystems. These infrastructures are by nature distributed RIs because we have many observation sites, and the more mature research infrastructures are operational and connected to their diverse user communities in science, industry, and society, including institutional users like the European Earth Observation Program Copernicus. So this is one of our prime users of our data. The cluster of environmental research infrastructures we have built is focusing on the cross-discipline harmonization and standardization activities, together with the implementation of joint data management and access structures of RI level, because we aim to build a strategic coordination observation systems to catch up with the needs for global Earth observations. Since this process is by sure not finalized at the end of the ENVIFAIR project, the continuing support of science cluster development by European resources is essential for the full release of the opportunities and research and innovation from our fields, from the RI collaboration. Here I see ESFRI as one key actor who can help further developing their brainchildren, which are the research infrastructures, towards interdisciplinary research enabling infrastructures. That's where we want to be. This includes a key role in aligning the different stakeholders around the aspects of long-term operation. Our services and data are extensively used in the monitoring and research, not only by Copernicus, but also by the World Meteorological Global Observing System, or the AGRO program for international ocean research. In our domain, open access and open science is widely implemented, and the provision of data and services to specific users is handled by bilateral contracts, whereas handling of data provision via EOSC is not yet clear at all. So here we certainly support EOSC Live's plea that ESFRI Stakeholders Forum is in a good position for fostering the discussion to solve that issue on recovering the costs and regulating the provision of data. So this, and I want to make that point, this is really essential for our long-term operation. The RIs are operational on their own, but we want to go further towards EOSC as a platform, and here we need the support by the ERIC Forum. So the ERIC Stakeholder Forum can help us here and in 2 points to serve the key priorities, what we are doing. We ask for to steer discussion between European programs and research infrastructures on long-term sustained development and operation of the science clusters. And the sustainable ecosystem of interoperable research infrastructures needs coordinated action with many national funders. And here the Stakeholder Forum can help as well. Thank you so much for bringing that statement from our side to you.
Andreas, thank you, and thanks for illustrating, I think, quite convincingly how the forum is also critical for individual clusters or research infrastructures. So the other perspective for that key area of Europe's science. And now turn to social sciences and humanities with Ivana, Iljazic-Vercic, something like this.
Thank you, that's perfect.
Apologies, or coordinator of the Social Sciences and Humanities Open OC project.
Open Cloud.
Open Cloud, of course. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. You said my name actually extremely well, given that you are saying it for the first time. About shock. So this was, I think, I can clearly say it's a groundbreaking project for social sciences and humanities, because it, I think, for the first time ever brought together all the important stakeholders. At the time, at least, we tried to include all of the important stakeholders of SSH in Europe into an initiative to connect the European Open Science Cloud. It started by all 5 ESFRI landmarks and 1 project at a time, leading all the stakeholders into that direction with the aim, as I said, to connect to EOSC. Another important aims at the time were also maximizing data reuse through open science and fair principles, which in practice means that we were aligning standards, developing a common marketplace, so the catalog of resources, dealing with remote access, secure access, as Nicholas mentioned, which is a huge issue in social sciences, then semantic techniques, training, and so on and so forth, tools and services And one additional aim was interconnecting existing and new infrastructures, which means that we brought in new communities, and then finally establishing appropriate governance model for SSH EOSC. Now, we started with 47 partners. We will end in April, and this is the first cluster project that is ending with 53 partners. It is worth mentioning that we started with 3 thematic communities. We are ending with 7 communities entering SHOC, 4 of them actually being featured as new ESFRI projects on 21 ESFRI roadmap. It was a project with duration of 40 months, project budget of 14.5 million euros. Now, what are our sort of handouts, or what are we taking home? What have we learned? First, we wanted to continue all of this, and for that, the memorandum of understanding is currently in place and is being signed as we speak by all the SSH landmarks. With other partners will be invited to join after the founding members, so to say, have signed. SHOC community simply didn't want this momentum and wave of collaboration and sharing to stop. Now, there is also another underlying reason, and that is sustainability of all the results of all the tools and services and key exploitable results that we actually developed as part of this project. And it requires the common effort, especially of ESFRIs, while it's landmarks or the projects that have joined to actually sustain those results. And then it also pointed out the significance of collaboration between ESFRI project, often representing thematic communities, and the landmarks, which is what I already mentioned, connecting existing and new infrastructures or aspiring infrastructures. Now, Jana mentioned in the very beginning that the ecosystem of our stakeholders is actually very, very changeable. It never stops. It's never settled, and it's often not reflected in governance architecture that was envisaged for research infrastructures in the beginning when they were established. So it's ever-growing system of stakeholders, and of course, research community in general is extremely important, especially the bottom-up approach that is often not exploited sufficiently, as Gabi already mentioned. But then there are also non-ESFRI RIs of interest, as we learned from close collaboration with other clusters, also featured here, which is a huge added value, and it builds on transition from disciplinary silos that SHOC try to do, and supporting, of course, cross-disciplinarity and, more importantly, cross-domain collaborations that are yet to come in the new funding program and funding period. So we see ESFRI as a platform for all stakeholders to come together and for facilitating collaboration between, as I said, existing new infrastructures and all the wider ecosystem that might have not been included in the beginning in this huge ecosystem. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and for representing indeed key scientific communities, very diverse as well. So your role in the forum will be essential. And I now finish with, and now I'm getting mixed up. Yes, I finish with the research communities with ESFRI Kale or Kvale. You are the director of Excel, and you will cover energy.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Sverre Kvale. You pronounced it quite rightly. Good. Thank you for the invitation to give a pitch on Excel and how we interact with different stakeholders. And Excel is the research infrastructure for carbon capture, utilization, transport, and storage of CO2. So Eric, we are on Eric since 2017, and a landmark also on the ESFRI roadmap. We have more than 80 distributed research facilities across Europe, with a rather slim central staff, less than a handful of personnel in the central office. We need to identify and prioritize our contacts and collaborations with both strategic and operative stakeholders. And this we do in line with our mission, which is to contribute to reducing CO2 emissions by closing CCUS technology gaps. And on a high level, we impact with policymakers, and on the European level, obviously EU Green Deal is important for us because They have set targets, and they also have corresponding missions, which provide funding to developing technologies. So we actually are involved in that, also applying for this kind of funding. And not to forget Horizon Europe, where there are specific calls in this funding scheme for both research infrastructure, but also for technology development within CCUS. So we are joining forces with industry and other research communities to apply for funding also within Horizon Europe. And the obvious stakeholders on a more operative level is the scientific community, research institute, university, and so forth. And those are obviously the main users of the Excel research infrastructure through projects. And we also have joint projects collaborating with them both on international projects and national projects. So we also have formalized permanent collaboration with a couple of ERICs through MOUs. And industry has become more and more important for us. So we have close collaboration with energy-intensive industries, and we join forces, as I mentioned, with them to apply for funding for investing in pilots and research facilities within the ERIC, the Excel infrastructure. So we also part of or members of the Zero Emission Platform and Process for Planet and European Steel Partnerships, which is important for us. Then we can join forces and we can discuss what the needs are for the industry into the future and which research facilities we should include and invest in. And at last, I'd like to mention, obviously, ERIC Forum, which is important for us as a small research infrastructure to share more general experiences and also work on policies together. And so that's really good. And this ESFRI Stakeholder Forum, I really support, because it's important for us also to take part in these kind of discussions and to learn from each other. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. And we finish now with two representatives of communities of analytical facilities. This is the way you are described, dear colleagues, with Lens and Leaps. And I start with Robert McGreevy. So you are the chair of the League of Advanced European Neutron Sources.
Okay, thank you. So I'm the last but one in the relay race, so I'll try not to drop the baton. So just to say, neutron sources are really what you might call classical research infrastructures. They're very rare. They're typically large physical infrastructures, single-sited, dealing with hundreds or even thousands of users across wide scientific disciplines. And we actually have a long history of what I'll call research infrastructure innovation. Some of the very first user programs, which all research infrastructures have now, were actually developed at neutron sources in the late 1950s. We had the first EU transnational access user program. We were one of the first integrated infrastructure initiatives. And now we're a member of a larger consortium called Analytical Research Infrastructures in Europe, which is trying to do exactly what was you asked for earlier about pulling together different types of research infrastructures to solve some of the grand challenges. So we are a natural stakeholder of ESFRI. However, the landscape of neutron facilities has changed a lot in recent years due to the closure of several facilities. Nuclear reactors, research reactors come to the end of their lifetime. And so now we have a very different set of partners within LENS. We have one ESFRI, one ERIC, 4 national facilities, and 3 what we call neutron knowledge centers, which are centers of expertise where there were facilities, but now we need to include those to help them operate other facilities. So for us, sustainability is the key issue. And I know this is talked about a lot at the moment. In 2016, ESFRI produced a neutron landscape document. In 2021, the neutron roadmap, the ESFRI roadmap landscape section, both identified, and here I quote, that the future unavailability of neutron sources poses a major threat as older sources are closed down, while existing sources are unable to cope with the demand. And that was even before the 2021 decision that the ILL reactor will stop operating in 2033. So what are we doing about this? How do we get the sustainability? A lens is in the process of just finalizing a landscape document, which is an update of the 2016 ESFRI document in the sense, and we're launching a new concept called the European Laboratory for Neutron Scattering. So how do we actually take lens to the next level and pull together a more coordinated, not only in terms of services we offer and technologies we develop, but also how we coordinate the funding and plan, because we need long-term commitments. These are not short-term things. Also, we have to look at how we take on board the new challenges and opportunities. So the challenges are things like environmental sustainability. We are major users of energy, and so we have to deal with how do we actually improve that. We can't get over that, but also how you do sell the benefits of what these research infrastructures do for net zero, for example. And many people have mentioned the opportunities, for example, of computing and data. So what we want from Lens, what we want from ESFRI as a stakeholder. ESFRI doesn't have funding, that's fine. What it does have is convening power. So that's shown by this meeting. It's pulled together all these actors in this space. So we need ESFRI to help us develop this European Laboratory of Neutron Scattering concept, and then hopefully its future implementation, because that needs to include the research infrastructures, funders, national and the Commission, and other stakeholders. So we really need ESFRI to actually help us do that. But this is a generic example of ESFRI needing to take more actions in the sustainability space. It's not just about identifying new infrastructures, but how can ESFRI work in the sustainability space? And I actually wrote a paper on this for ESFRI back in 2007, I think it was. So that question has still been around for 15 years, and it's about time that we addressed it. Thank you.
Very good. Robert, thanks a lot. And I think indeed the slightly broader setup certainly gives quite some momentum to bring ESFRI indeed to the next level. So that's well noted. And I finish with the last speaker, Jean Dayan. You are the Vice Chair of the League of European Accelerator-Based Photon Sources, otherwise known as LEAPS.
Yeah, thanks a lot, and as many of you might not know, LEAPS.
Jean, we don't hear you very well. Could you speak closer to the micro, or?
I can.
Voilà, là, c'est mieux.
Is that better?
No, there's a bit of a little less, maybe a little less.
Like this?
Yeah, that's good.
That's good. So yeah, as many of you might not know, LEAPS, we are the network of the 13 synchrotrons and 6 free electron lasers in Europe, which in fact was established 5 years ago. And altogether, we are operating 300 end stations, offering over 1 million beam time hours per year to academic and industrial users, about 35,000 users a year. And this is free of charge for academic users. So for the last 5 years, LEAPS has enabled joint technology development, which is quite important, but also better coordinated response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Most of LEAPS members being national infrastructures, we enthusiastically welcome the ESFRI Stakeholder Forum and foresee a closer strategic interaction with ESFRI as a network. We are presently finalizing a strategy for accelerator-based photon sources, which includes facility upgrades, making use of greener and more sustainable technologies. But there are 2 items in this strategy that I would like to emphasize here. The first one is the digital transformation of the operation of our facilities, which has also been motivated by the pandemic. But maybe even more important, we feel that it's time to expand our service provision, which is already quite successful according to the ESFRI landscape analysis. But we would like to maximize our contribution to the grand challenges our societies are facing, as reflected, for example, in Horizon Europe. And so for that, we are willing to implement targeted challenge-driven service provision, by establishing pilot partnerships with key stakeholders. And this is where, in fact, this stakeholder forum is really quite important. And of course, in the framework of the new European research area. And that's it.
Thank you very much, Jean, for this last contribution. Jana, I think this was probably even more than we had hoped for. At least that's my impression. There's a lot of massive interest to interact in the ESFRI Stakeholder Forum. There were really very substantial and very specific contributions as well on what the agenda could be as we move it forward. So I am very much encouraged and delighted with this session. And I am not going to try to conclude on content. That was too rich for me, but I'm sure that you will be able to do that, Jana. But thanks a lot. Over to you.
Jean-Éric, thank you. Stay with us for a few minutes while I try to conclude on this. Now, I should start by saying that it's also too rich for me to conclude within a few minutes. It's absolutely impossible, but I agree with you. This was a fantastic session. In my opinion, there were so many useful messages that we have received from our stakeholders, and such preparedness for further cooperation and for deepening our interactions. And this is absolutely necessary to improve the quality of our operations and the services that we offer to the user communities, but also with you as contributors to our research infrastructures. So I would only like to thank you at the end for these contributions. I would like to say that we will organize, as I stated at the beginning, we will organize hopefully a live meeting later this year in autumn, probably, or later this, well, before summer. We will see that. To meet you all at the real stakeholder forum meeting in person. And we are also considering how to bring, to set up an instrument to bring also stakeholders, of course, not possible all of you, but representative stakeholders already to the next meeting of ESFRI in order to deepen the interaction that we have. I would also like, I hope Jean-Éric, you're still here. I would like to thank you for the strong support and commitment of European Commission throughout the years. And it was really essential to make ESFRI as it is now, to help it shape as it is now. So I would like to express thanks to everyone taking part today, also to my colleagues from ESFRI. Who sit in the audience. So points taken, we will take it from here in our work. And I would like at the end to ask you all to turn on your cameras so that we can take a photo to keep for our memories. Thank you.
Thank you, Jana. And as far as I'm concerned, looking forward to meet many of you in Paris tomorrow.
Thank you. This brings us to the end of today. I hope to see many of you tomorrow for the 20th year of ESFRI anniversary. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank
you.
Bye. Thank you.